Namaskar. Could I please request all of you to join me in a prayer which we all need the most currently. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah Sarve Santo Niramaya Sarve Bhadrani Pashantu Ma Kaschit Dukh Bhag Bhave Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Good evening, everyone. I'll be failing in my very prime duty if I do not register my gratitude to the Providence, to Professor Akshayanandji and his entire dedicated team who are instrumental in this conversation, which means a lot to me. Today, the conversation which we have chosen is Antarang Yoga, a debate in reference to Guru Nanak's famous Siddh Goshti. But before we come to Guru Nanak's Siddh Goshti, I'll just like to ponder for a minute, try to draw attention of all you learned ones to the history of yoga. Volume 16, Part 2, about the history of yoga, published by the Center of Studies for Civilization, New Delhi, under the title History of Science, Philosophy and Culture in Indian Civilization. The chapter says that yoga has existed in Indian knowledge sphere at two planes, the individual plane as well as the universal plane. The Dhyan, who's the author of the last 5 chapters of Yajurved, which is popularly known as Isha Upanishad, brings forth the first kind of yoga, that is the individual plane of yoga, wherein he gives us the Ajappa Jap methodology of the realization of the higher recesses of yoga, which popularly is also known as Antarang Yoga. But in Yajurved itself, a part of it emphasizes on the universal plane of yoga, when quote, it's "May all living beings of the world look at me with a friend's eye, as I myself look at all of them with a friend's eye." This is 36th.18 of Yajurved. So that means that in our history of yoga, we have the two planes of yoga, that is at the individual as well as at the universal plane. And needless to share it all with all of you once again, that In light of this, the Grand Maharishi gave us the 8 letters of Ashtanga Yoga: Yam, Niyam, Asan, Pranayam, Pratyahar, Dharana, Dhyan, and Samadhi. I will also like to draw your attention to the history of Indian philosophy, a major part of Indian philosophy, which is popular with the name of Shad-darshan, Purva-mimamsa, Uttar-mimamsa, Sankhya, Yoga, Nyaya, and Visheshak. The 6 major philosophies of India, popularly known with the name Shad-darshan. The popular methodology of the development of knowledge in the entire knowledge base of Bharatiya Darshan has been debates, discussions, akhadas, conversation, deeper introspection, and dialogue. Dialogue has never been lost to Indian philosophical knowledge generation art. And in the backdrop of this, when we reach 16th, 15th century, precisely 1469, when Guru Nanak was born, 1469 to 1539 is the era of lifetime of Guru Nanak. After realization the supreme reality, Guru Nanak undertook 4 major journeys, which according to one of the estimates, he traveled about 25,000 kilometers, which are second to the distance covered by the famous historian Ibn Battuta. These are popularly known as 4 Udasis. During the 4 Udasis, the purpose of Nanak, as described by his immediate contemporary in the famous Wars of Bhai Gurdas, he says that Babe Pekh Banaya, Udasi ki reet chalai, Chadya Sodan Tart Lokai. Now here we find the confluence of the individual plane of yoga as well as the universal plane of yoga. Individual plane, that after the realization of the self, then it is for the universal realization of the entire mankind that one has to have the indulgence. So the purpose of Guru Nanak's Udasis, as described by Bhai Gurdas Ji, is that Guru Nanak purposely undertook those journeys and took on to that way of living life so that he can interact with people. And at the same time, during that time only, we witnessed the epitome of development of Siddh Siddhant Paddhati in yoga, which was popularly known as Siddh Yoga or Nath Yoga or Nath Sampradaya. The history goes into the proof that Guru Nanak indulged in conversation with the Siddh yogis at 3 places: Sumer Parbat, Achal Batala, popularly now known as Batala, and Gorakh Mata, which now is known as Nanak Mata. At 3 of these geographical locales, during the years 1500 to 1524, when Guru Nanak undertook his Udasis, he interacted with the Siddh yogis. And that conversation later on, during the last years of Guru Nanak's life, he records in Shri Guru Granth Sahib from the pages 938 to 946 under 73 bodies. The three names of the Yog Sampradaya which creep up in this record are Charpatnath, Pangarnath and Loharippa. And the conversation between Guru Nanak and these Siddh yogis, it ranges from the mundane exchange of pleasantries as to introduction as to who are you, to the higher plane metaphysical questions as well as the answers. And this Siddh Goshti, which is popular, this portion in Shri Guru Granth Sahib, that is pages 938 to 946, they are popularly known as Siddh Goshti, as listed by Guru Nanak. Now, there is a purpose in this conversation. This conversation is undertaken both by the yogis as well as Guru Nanak, upkeeping the individualistic as well as universal of yoga. Yogis, these Siddh yogis, they were no lesser beings. They were the ones who were very high in their yogic practices, especially of Hatha Yoga, as is the design of Nath Sampradaya. They were the ones who were endowed with riddhis and siddhis. They were the accomplished ones. And so was Nanak. The two parties, realizing fully well, they enter into this conversation or debate for twin purposes: for the clarification of their own cobwebs, as well as for leaving something for the universal plane, for generations, so that the mistless wisdom can be created. And it was with this purpose that the conversation, careless conversation, it is a conversation of the highest range of metaphysical discovery of truth. Just to give you as to 938 page, the conversation between the two parties, especially the yogi here concerned is Charpatnath. The question which is being asked by Charpatnath ji from Guru Nanak is, Duniya sagar duttar kaiye kyun kar paiye paro Audu Nanak Deo Sacha Bich, meaning thereby that Charpatnath ji is asking Guru Nanak that this world, how can you go through sea in this world which is full of treacherous, impossible treks? And to that Nanak answers, Ape akhe, ape samjhe, tis kya uttar dije, saach kaho tum pargarami, तुझ क्या पैसन दीजिए? Meaning that how can and why should a learned one like you seek the answer to this question who claims to be knowing the answers to these questions? Meaning thereby that one who is already enlightened need not be told the answers. But in the next two padas, Guru Nanak gives his viewpoint about how to attain these higher recesses of Antarang Yoga. And he says, Jaise jal mein kamal niralam, murgai ne saane, Surt sabad pavsagar tariye Nanak naam vakhane. That just like the lotus flower remains aloof from the water in which it is born, and just like the duck who swims in the water without letting her wings being wet or interfere in her journey on the water, it is that technique through which the humans have to pass through this world. And further he says, Surt sabad pavasagar tariye, that in the consciousness has to concentrate, the surt has to, the chetana has to concentrate on Shabd. Shabd is knowledge, the truthful knowledge. And it is through that concentration, the discovery of the ultimate truth, which is going to be the medium of our journey on this world. This is just one example of the level of conversation of Siddh Goshti. Nanak, on page number 848 of Shri Guru Granth Sahib, defines as to who is Siddh. And in that he says, he alone is a Siddh, he alone is a yogi, and he alone is a wandering pilgrim who meditates on one perfect Lord. One perfect Lord hereby represents the one non-fallible truth. And it is that infallible truth which has to become the basis of the realization of the recesses of Antarang Yoga. Nanak was not unaware of Kundalini Yoga, and on that he comments that Gurmukh is the answer to the realization of the ultimate realities of Yoga. And he says the Gurmukh has to have the capacity of seeing the unseen. The Gurmukh eradicates the three gunas, Rajo, Tamo and Sato, and he sees him only with capital H. Antar Bahar Eko Jane. It is the merger of the two realities. Yuj takes place here. When the Antar and the Bahar becomes one, the inner and the outer realities, when the twain merge, that is the quality of the Gurmukh. And Nanak says the three nadis, that is Sushmana, Ida and Pingla, are revealed unto him by capital H him. That anyone who's a Gurmukh, these three nadis will automatically become alive. You don't have to struggle too much for that. And the channels for that are Shabad and Sahaj. And I will just sum up Nanak's summary on yoga as to how one can attain yoga. He says that jog na khintha, jog na dande, jog na pasam chadaiye, jog na mundi mood mandaiye, angi vaiye, anchan mai niranjan raiye, jog jugat ime paiye. These conversations, there are 100 questions spread over these, more than 100 questions spread over these pages, which are difficult to sum up in 20 minutes. But the sum total of this conversation is that the higher recesses of Antarang Yoga can be attained through this technique of going easy and realizing the truth and living with that truth. Not only at one place during this conversation, Nanak says, Galli jog na paiye. Conversation cannot just take us to yoga. You have to have the practice of it, like Indian philosophy says, You have to live it through. You have to have the darshan of the truth. The one who cannot live it will never be able to have it. So, it is galli jog na paiye, but how? Jeevtyan mar rahiye, aisa jog kamaiye. That detached attachment, that is the answer to attain the highest recesses of Antarang Yoga and Nanak's path of self-realization. In that he says it is the Sahaj, it is the Shabad, and it is the following of the Hukum of the final truth, which is going to take us to the ultimate recesses of Antarang Yoga. And detached attachment will be attained to the individual of this caliber with no effort at all. It is just the Sahaj which is going to be easy. Take the realities, live the realities, and that is the end. Yuj will definitely be attained, and it is life lived at this plane which is going to be liberating, which is going to be blissful, which is going to be peaceful. Thank you. Om Shanti.